This is Mikhail Khodorkovsky. He was once Russia's richest man. At one point, he's believed to be worth about $15 billion. In 2003, he was listed as one of the 10 most powerful billionaires in the world by Forbes. But then that same year, 2003, he got himself arrested.
The richest man in Russia, one of the richest men in the world, is behind bars tonight. Mikhail Khodorkovsky, the head of Russia's largest oil company, was arrested by police when his jet stopped in Siberia today. He's accused of fraud and tax evasion. Khodorkovsky is considered a political opponent of Russian President Vladimir Putin.
As a political opponent of Vladimir Putin, Mikhail Khodorkovsky decided that he would put his money to work for what he wanted for his country. He put his money to work against the man who had him arrested on that Siberian tarmac. He decided to use some of his vast fortune to fund and lead an opposition effort against Vladimir Putin, to try to topple Putin. And so, predictably, Putin had him arrested again, put him back in jail. And then Putin ripped his guts out, financially speaking.
With a blow of the gavel, a Russian auctioneer succeeded on Sunday in dismembering Russia's foremost private oil company. The auction of the Yukos Oil Corporation's biggest subsidiary, a key world producer, is being seen as one of the most significant steps backwards in Russia's 12-year chaotic march towards capitalism.
People are scared, and they're scared that this is not just Yukos, this is other companies. They're scared that property rights are flimsy in Russia.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has cracked down on freedom of the press and eliminated many local elections, and now is staring down some of the country's biggest private businesses. Top of his list is Mikhail Khodorkovsky, Russia's richest man and the founder of Yukos. He's been in jail for more than a year facing tax fraud charges, and Yukos has been slapped with its own $28 billion tax bill. Analysts say the auction was ordered to clip Khodorkovsky's wings, but in a strange twist, it was won by an unknown company. Following weeks of speculation that Kremlin-controlled Gazprom, the world's largest natural gas company, would walk away the winner.
Okay, Vladimir Putin arrested this billionaire who had dared oppose him. Then he seized the oil company that made that guy so rich, seized Yukos Oil. They took Yukos and said, "You're owned by a criminal, we're taking you." They took it, and they basically pretend sold it to an unknown oil company. Who's this company that's buying it? Well, days later, the Kremlin-owned oil company, Rosneft, got it for 100 rubles, which is approximately $29 at the time. That's how much they got the oil company for. And the guy who heads up Rosneft, the guy who ran that whole scheme to take Yukos Oil, this huge company, for $29 and absorb it into his own company and make Rosneft, with its Kremlin ownership, the biggest oil company on earth, that guy is Putin's best friend. They worked together in the intelligence services back in the Soviet days. They call him Putin's shadow because in way too many pictures, there's Putin, and then he's the only guy right there next to him. In this picture, he's the guy standing to Putin's left. In this same picture, if you look at the other side of it, the guy to Putin's right, who's shaking his hand, that's the CEO of Exxon Mobil, who is Donald Trump's nominee to be Secretary of State. Here they are again, Trump's pick for Secretary of State and Putin's shadow. This time without Putin, because sometimes it's fun hanging out alone. Our Secretary of State nominee, Rex Tillerson, he knows the head of Rosneft, the Kremlin-owned oil company. He knows him very well. He signed a ginormous $500 billion deal with them to drill the Arctic in 2012. That got cut short 2 years later when Russia invaded Ukraine and annexed part of Ukraine, and the U.S. government sanctioned Russia. The head of Rosneft, Putin's shadow, he was one of the people that we levied sanctions against. It really put a crimp in that deal. This summer, in June, Exxon CEO Rex Tillerson was invited to an economic forum in St Petersburg, Russia. He was invited with another number of other big oil execs from the U.S. By this summer, though, of course, we had this, as a country, this very serious beef with Russia over them invading Ukraine, seizing parts of other countries. Because of the sanctions that our government put on them about that, the State Department reached out to all the executives who got invited to that expo in Russia, and the State Department asked them all to please not go. That it would be against the interest of the United States of America. It would be against America's interest. It would be bad for our country if they went. Guess who went? The guy who Donald Trump has nominated to lead the State Department.
Given that a number of the sanctions on Russia related to oil and natural resource exploration. Does the idea of a major American energy company sending its top official undermine the sanctions, you think, in any way?
Well, look, again, we've communicated our policy on Russia to the U.S. business community in multiple fora. Ultimately, each company's leadership needs to make its own decision. Most U.S. companies, however, recognize that attending this forum sends a poor message out there about the acceptability of Russia's actions.
Most companies recognize that. Most of them do. Exxon doesn't. The CEO of Exxon, our Secretary of State in waiting, he went to St. Petersburg. He told the State Department, screw you, we're going to make money. It's going to hurt America. Boo-hoo. He sat in the front row opposite his friend from the Kremlin-owned oil company, Rosneft, Putin's shadow. And at one point, they both got in a big, hearty laugh at the expense of the United States. Mr. Tillerson got a question on how Exxon was squaring their commitment to Russia and the United States' sanctions against Russia. He got asked that question. This is how he answered. The best thing to watch for here, the guys who are hearing this in Russian, they have to wait for the translation. So yeah, there's a little bit of a delay. But as they get the translation and they hear what he's saying, watch for the thumbs up here. Watch.
Are we on? Okay, thank you. As to the sanctions questions, I'll use the same approach my friend Mr. Sechin took, and that's a question for the government. So if there's a U.S. government official here that'd like to respond, I'm happy to toss it to them. So let me move to technology. I think one of the most underappreciated aspects of the oil and natural gas business.
That's the guy from Rosneft. That's Putin's best friend. He waits for the translation to come through, and he's like, oh, a U.S. government. Good one, my friend. He's the guy who's had sanctions personally levied against him by our government, which Exxon doesn't care about at all. Way to go, buddy.